Not spectacular. We had a problem in the morning with the gearbox, which was obviously difficult and frustrating for everyone in the garage, obviously, because the boys did a great job, kept topping it up, but you go out, you can only do one lap, and so we didn't get the long runs and stuff. But I think we recovered okay with it. They did a great job changing the gearbox and getting us ready for P2. But Charles was 6 cents off. I was close to a second off, so not ideal. But I think there's lots of learning, so I think we'll make some changes and hope we can try and get a little bit closer. But yeah, we won't be at the front.
Can Lewis Hamilton reverse Ferrari's fate with just a technical update? What he said after getting out of SF25 in Austria is not just an opinion, it is a warning. The atmosphere in Spielberg had something different from early. It was not the alpine climate of Red Bull Ring or the usual murmur of engineers that adjust to the millimeter. It was something else. It was the feeling that we were witnessing a key chapter, one of those moments where the narrative of Formula One stops revolving around the tenths of a second and begins to weave around people, decisions, and accumulated pressure. Lewis Hamilton, with more than 300 large awards in tow, presented himself to the practices of the Austrian Grand Prix not as an invincible champion, but as a man aware that this new stage with Ferrari is both an opportunity and a constant test. And that duality was completely going through it. He did not walk with the lightness of who knows that he will dominate, but with the concentration and seriousness of someone who is still knowing the land he steps on. His body language was revealing. The smile with which he usually arrives at paddock was there, yes, but it was not the one who celebrates, but that of whom he appreciates being able to continue fighting, although he knows that the fight will be long. And in that context, his statements charged even more weight. "I am happy that we have an update. It is always exciting to have new pieces in the car," he said, and although the phrase might seem a positive wink to the team's work, the subtext was evident. It was a nuanced happiness, almost diplomatic. It was not euphoria, it was cautious gratitude. His thanks to Maranello's engineers was genuine, but he did not hide the fact that he still does not trust what he has in hand. In Ferrari there are still no certainties, only hopes. And then it dropped a phrase that in another context would go unnoticed, but that works here as a warning and as a symptom. We do not really know the effect that this improvement will have. It is not the usual information that we obtain on how much aerodynamic load we have won. That line summarizes everything. He talks about a car that still does not communicate with his pilot as he should. Of a team that tries but still fails to translate the effort into confidence. Of a champion who is not sure of whether the path they are traveling is correct or only one more variant in the endless search for competitiveness. This is the emotional paradox that defines Hamilton's moment in Ferrari. He is grateful but not satisfied. He is committed but not excited. He has reached a team with history, with weight, with monumental demands, but he has not yet found the symbiosis he needs to dominate again. And that, for someone who already won everything, is perhaps the most difficult to accept. The Red Bull Ring was not only one more circuit in the calendar. It was the mirror where Hamilton saw the true size of the challenge he faces. Talent is not enough. The experience is not enough. It is not enough to have the name Ferrari embroidered in the chest. Here, the only thing that matters is what it manages to do in 71 laps, with a car that is not yet up to its ambition. And that internal conflict between desire and reality, between what it represents and what it really has under the right foot, is what makes this beginning of history between Hamilton and Ferrari something so dramatically attractive. When the green lights lit in the first practical session of the Austrian Grand Prix, what was at stake was much more than a timetable. For Ferrari, it was the first major test of a new aerodynamic package that had been developed under the direct pressure of his new star pilot. For Hamilton, it was a tangible opportunity to see if all that collective effort could finally become measurable performance. But the track, as always, was not fooled by intentions. Lewis Hamilton finished the session in the 9th position, just over half of the leader, George Russell. The half-second may not sound much in absolute terms, but in the modern Formula One where the differences between success and failure are measured in thousands, that gap represents an abyss. Especially when you come from announcing a background update in Saucer, designed to correct the structural limitations of SF25. And this is where the technical dimension of the problem enters. Ferrari presented in Austria a deep review of the car. It was not a minor improvement, but a redesign that implied adjustments in the geometry of the Venturi tunnels, redistribution of the load on the edge of the ground, and a new approach to the channeling of the vortices. In theory, all this should translate into a greater stable aerodynamic load in medium and fast curves. in addition to improving the efficiency of the traction diffuser. In practice, at least on that first day, the benefits were diffuse. Hamilton explained it technically but without euphemisms. He said they were not receiving the usual information, that is, that the car was not delivering the data that normally indicates whether an improvement works or not. There were no conclusive signs of an aerodynamic load gain. There was no direct reading of how much grip had earned or if the airflow in the diffuser had improved. It was like trying to read a blank page with a magnifying glass. And for someone who has worked for years with engineers who dominate the art of feedback, this void was more than frustrating. And as if this were not enough, the British pilot also faced mechanical problems from the beginning. Gremlins in the gearbox, a colloquial expression that Hamilton has used in the past to refer to intermittent errors or failures, limited their time on the track just when I needed to shoot the most. It's not just about completing turns. It is about finding the equilibrium point, refine the setup, try motor maps, work with the tire temperatures and adjust the dynamic rake of the car. All of that goes to the fret when you cannot complete a representative stint. This was perhaps the most worrying detail of all Friday, that the team not only did not find clear signs of progress, but could not even complete the necessary cycle to obtain answers. The car was still nervous at the entrance of fast curves, unstable in prolonged braking and lacking traction in slow areas. And that, when you carry one of the most important updates of the year, is difficult to digest. In summary, Friday in Austria was a mixture of uncertainty, technical noise and tactical disappointment. Hamilton arrived looking for signs that Maranello's work began to pay fruits. What he found was a SF25 that still does not speak to him clearly, that does not convey confidence, and that on days like this, he remembers the erratic car of the previous year than to the championship weapon he hoped to receive. For a pilot who built his legacy about the consistency and technical confidence, that silence of the car is perhaps the most noisy of everything. When Lewis Hamilton speaks, he doesn't do it only as a pilot. His voice, with the weight of more than a decade at the top of Formula One, has a resonance that few in the paddock can match. Each statement is not just a technical analysis, it is also a message between the lines. And what was suggested after practices in Austria goes far beyond the timetable. It goes to the heart of what it means to compete in Ferrari, and the monumental challenge that implies trying to change the course of a team that has been looking for more than a decade without finding. Hamilton's signing was not a light bet. It was a declaration of intentions by Ferrari. They did not simply sign a fast pilot. They signed a figure that, due to their single presence, reconfigure internal dynamics, presses structures, demands precision. And in less than half season, the cracks that generate are already noticed. Because the SF25 that Hamilton drives today is, in part, the result of its direct influence. He was the one who asked for a change of philosophy. He was the one who insisted on abandoning partial solutions and betting on a complete redesign of the lower aerodynamic flow. And yet, even with those modifications, the car does not respond with the necessary forcefulness. The risk is evident. When the solutions are borne by pressure, not by conviction, the coherence of technical development is wobble. And this is where the drama intensifies. Because Hamilton's real challenge in Ferrari is not to win races. It is to transform a culture. Take an organization accustomed to work under political, media, and emotional pressure, to operate under the principles of method, technical clarity, and long-term vision. That is something that in Mercedes was breathed, which was integrated in each strategy meeting, in each simulation, and each data sheet. In Ferrari, that consistency still does not exist. There is talent, yes. There is passion, no doubt. But alignment is missing. Missing shared trust between engineering and piloting. And Hamilton knows. What is at stake, therefore, are not just points in the championship. It is the possibility of leaving a mark that transcends the results. Hamilton is trying to build a modern Ferrari, a team that believes again in processes, in cold analysis, in decisions that do not respond to the panic of a bad classification, but to a clear vision of where they should be within 18 months. But that kind of transformation hurts. It hurts the team because it implies releasing old habits. It hurts the pilot because it implies frustrations like Austria's. And the fan hurts, who hopes to see magic in each curve and does not understand why a red car cannot lead or at the enemy's house. There is a silent tension that crosses this whole process. Ferrari opted everything for Hamilton's aura. And Hamilton, aware that he is writing the last chapters of his career, needs this project to return more than statistics. You need to work. Because if it does not, what will remain will not be only a car that did not live up to it, but an unfinished narrative. A story that promised redemption but could end in resignation. Hamilton's future in Maranello will depend, to a large extent, how long is he willing to wait. And how much is willing to give in to maintain harmony in a team that historically has not known how to manage leadership figures as yours?